Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today, we are back on the West Coast with a runner who was there in the 70s with a lot of runners that were breaking new ground and as the running boom was really taking hold. Today on the podcast, Don Beckwith. Hi, Don.
Yeah, hello.
Let's tell people your background. Where did you grow up? What was sports like and what was competition meaningful for you starting out as a kid?
It's funny. I actually started out chasing a yellow bus to school when I was in the fourth grade. Actually, not chasing it, trying to beat it to school. I was born in a Army Quonset hut at Camp Hanford, which is a nuclear power plant. And so go figure, I have atrial fib problems, electrical. I grew up mostly in McMinnville, Oregon, which is about halfway from the coast to the coast, Pacific Northwest coast from Portland, Oregon. Pretty much all my formative years were there all the way through high school. Yeah. I think the bus driver used to let me beat him there.
When did you get into competitive athletics?
I started competing when I was about, oh my goodness, probably 11, 12 years old, 10 or 11. There was a fellow who was a longtime coach at Willamette University, used to have some just all-comers meets for all age groups. Started out there and got a hook in me, and that's where I started competing. Enjoyed it.
Was that just running in tennis shoes?
No, we actually had some track spikes back then. It was those plastic hard plates that were on the balls of the foot, really tough on you. Running that and Junior Olympics, all of that was in competitive gear.
Let's talk about your high school age frame. What year was that?
Okay, I graduated when I was 17 years old out of McMinnville. We had a 3-year high school and a 7th, 8th, and 9th grade to middle school. I went into high school in 1971.
That was a key time for one of the milestones of U.S. Olympics. Television was wide. What do you remember about the sport of running as a fan then?
Well, it's funny. I'm probably not the hugest fan. And what I mean by that is not that I don't like it, but I enjoy competing a lot more. I picked up more on a lot of the runners that were around outside of Oregon later on in life through the internet. But I just like to compete, always have. Looking forward to trying to compete here again pretty soon.
Let's finish off high school. What was the level of coaching and what kind of training and mileage and success did you have in high school?
Not much in the way of coach, unfortunately. I had a pretty nice coach, hell of a nice guy. Ronald Ellsbury was his name. May rest in peace. Died a little earlier than he should have, but he was my drafting teacher in high school. I was pretty much stuck on my own. I did get some help. I ran quite a bit with Linfield College, is also in McMinnville. They always had a pretty good track program. They had some pretty good runners out of high school that were competing there. I ran with them a lot. I started out with some pretty high mileage, probably 10, 15 miles a day when I was 10 years old, a little bit obsessive. It wasn't anything fast, but that's how I started out. Probably never got where I should have with interval training till even after probably I was done with the University of Oregon with Coach Dillinger. So always high mileage, too high mileage.
I want to get the feel for the West Coast. So I grew up on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. Was there women's program in your high school then?
There was, yes. We had a lot of people coming out, a lot of people out track. The head coach was fairly good too. We had some fairly good teams. I started out fairly well. I ran a 4:29 mile when I was 15. One of the first miles that I ran at a race in Astoria, Oregon, which is on the coast. It was a dead heat, if you can believe that, in a mile. A lot of fun. That one I remember really well. In particular, yeah.
And what about success? Were you winning races? Portland, do they have a city championship? And how does the Oregon State Championship series work?
Most of my best competition was in the Portland area. Guys like Greg Gustafson was one of the kids' names. Three brothers, Bob, Dan Fulton, a couple guys that ran fairly good. I did very well in the area, and I had one really good competitor, two of them, one out of St. Helens High School, Gary Barger, who ended up being a sub 4 minute miler and won the Twilight Mile at Oregon one year. He was a year old, out of St. Helens. He was probably my toughest competitor. Another one, David Castle, out of Silverton High School. I won a regional meet. Basically, you tried to qualify for let me see, we used to have a regional meet. So we'd go clear across the state, one time to Ontario, which is Eastern Oregon, where I won a meet there on a pretty tough course. And then after that, it's the state meet, which has always been held at Lane Community College in Eugene. And it started out pretty good. I think the highest I finished up was about seventh one year. And I think most of my problem was a little too high of mileage. And that continued. Yeah, even into Oregon.
But that's enough success to get noticed. What was the state of recruiting and scholarships? Did you get contacted by any schools? You were a little bit of a young graduate at age 17. That can make a difference. Most of us are coming out at 18. What kind of student were you and what was your thinking on college?
I was a pretty good student, probably 3.8 GPA, somewhere in that range. School was always pretty easy for me. I got a lot of attention. I had some calls from Oregon. They didn't offer any money. One of the best offers I got was, if you remember, Jim Grella at one time running with the Ryan back in those days. He had the most sub 4 minute miles anybody in the world. He actually sold the class rings, worked for a company that sold the class rings. That's how I first met him. Great guy, fantastic guy. And I probably should have taken him up on his offer because it was a full ride. And at that time, to the University of Portland was a $10,000 just in tuition. And they were going to pay everything, room and board and all that. But I elected to go to Oregon mainly because Pre was my idol, my big inspiration. I wanted to run with him.
Did you pay attention to the 72 Olympics?
Yeah, paid attention pretty much. Didn't get down to see it. So I wasn't that big of a track fan. Paid attention to what was going on, and especially with Dave Waddle. And actually, I did get down to see that race. I saw him race.
The trials.
Yeah. Funny side
Yeah.
story. When he was finishing up, Dave Waddle, after he had won that Olympic trials in the 800 meters, he was out jogging and I was out near him and I was taking a run myself. And a guy snatched his hat off his head. And he ran him down. He ran this guy down, got his hat back. So I always thought that was one of the funniest things that I remember of that Olympic trials. Yes.
Yeah, that was a nonviolent encounter, was it?
It was, yeah, it was, but it was just funny. One of those funny things.
That's good.
If I could have had a photo of his face when the guy snatched it, he went after him. It was pretty funny. He was
Yeah,
serious.
that's like grabbing the record-breaking home run baseball today. That might be who knows what would have happened. All right, so you get to Oregon, and you had been running high mileage as a high schooler. You're in the most heralded and iconic program at that point. What was it like as a freshman entering Oregon?
It's funny. I never really looked at it that way. Obviously, there was a lot of good runners down there. I wanted to run with Pre, and I knew I was going to have to pay for my own college and education. As soon as I graduated in early June in 73, I started a painting business when I was 13 years old. So I was painting houses to give you an idea of the mileage. I'd get up at 6 a.m. and work till 2 in the afternoon. Then I'd take a lunch. Then I worked at a plywood mill from 3 o'clock till 11 o'clock in the evening. Then I'd jump in my shorts and I'd do a 5-minute pace 10 miler. I did that almost every day for 3 months before I got down to Oregon. So it's fairly strong when I got in there.
I think, yeah, that's a good base for a freshman coming in, but you were a short to middle distance racer. So cross country, what happened when you entered?
I was always fairly quick. I certainly wasn't as fast as somebody like Ryan or Mike Boit that could run 46 second quarters, but I could run in the 48.9 range with a rolling start. Another thing I did in high school that really didn't help, was not too good, is almost every meet I ever had in high school, I'd run the mile, then I'd run the 880, then I'd run the 2 mile. And while I was warming down, relaxing, then I'd finish up with the mile relay. So I get into Oregon, and Oregon's incredible. I love cross country, but for some reason, I just could never really run 10K as well as I thought I could, or 5K. I was more a miler, should have stuck more to the 800 meters, quarter mile. But anyway, when we got in there, we had no meets in cross country. We ran no meets. All we did was train. And then we went to a Tokati golf course, and that's where they picked the team. Top 7 guys made it. But before that happened, we do a workout that was a lot of fun to do. I really enjoyed it. It was a 2 times a 1 mile on the track, in gear, in spikes, with a 10-minute jog rest in between the 2 miles. And of course, I had probably run 4:22 as a sophomore. And then as a senior in high school, I'd ran 4:22 again. Just never, I'm pretty certain that had most to do with it. But when we first get there, I ran that 2 times a 1 mile. At the first, I think it was a 4:20 and a 4:18. And they were real easy. So I thought, damn, I'm getting fit. And that was, I'd say, in late September, October. Then we did the workout again before the track season, which would have been before March. And I ran 2 4:16s with Terry Williams, who obviously was a pretty good runner down at Oregon and had a national record at either 6 miles or 10K. I get him mixed up with Rudy Chapa, was in that same range in the 10K. And so that's how it all started out. It was challenging. I jumped in there. They're going to run with anybody. And I gave it a good shot. And
Well, what was it like as a student athlete? You're paying for your own thing. So were there scholarship athletes housed differently than you?
oh, yes, most of the guys were in dorms. I probably ran better than most the distance runners who were on 4-year full rides my first year. So I was a little ticked off when I didn't get offered much. Dillinger offered me a couple terms of tuition. And at that time, it was like $300 a term for tuition, which I'd go out on a weekend and make $500 a night doing tile. So
It's
it kind
funny.
of,
Yeah. It changes your
yeah,
perspective of what he thinks he's
well,
making a
yeah,
good offer.
I was in a tough discipline. I went down there to go into architecture. There's nothing else much you could do. It was hard to even train. In fact, most of the classes I took in architecture were in landscape architecture because the regular general architecture courses interfered with the Tuesday. We had Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday morning interval training all through the year at Oregon.
How competitive were workouts? Were people doing the workouts for the goal? Were people wanting to win each heat, each step? How
Oh,
was it?
yeah, you hit it right on the nail head there. Believe it or not, there was probably 70 guys running with the team, other than the actual team members that were running in the races. And I was
Mm.
one of them. I got stuck running the very competitive, like a little ridiculous. And a lot of people whooped themselves up and left everything on the track in workouts. And I was pretty lucky. I always had a good sense of pace, always within a half a second of pace, whether I was racing or running. But the competitive portion of it, yeah, it got a little out of hand, a little crazy. Out of those 70 guys, there were probably 5 of them left at the end of the year. It was that kind of a system where they just turned you up and the guys that were left competed.
All right. What kind of relationships did you have with people like Pre and the other top competitors that were going to be at nationals and cross country, et cetera?
Pretty good, pretty close. We all hung out as much as possible. A lot of the guys on the team, like Matt Centrowitz, I would say, I'll try to think of a few of the other guys, but Bill Dillinger really liked the bars. He's a hell of a good pool player. I lost a mustache playing pool with him. He was a little bit of a pool star, but there was a little bit of that. And then my experience with Pre, of course, was he was already graduated. So he wasn't in school, but he was working out with us. For instance, when we ran that 2 times a 1 mile in the spring by my year of 1974, my first year of track, he ran just incredible. I think he ran a 4:02 and a 3:58, 3:59 were his 2 miles on that. But he was getting there. He was getting pretty fit. he was just a hell of a nice guy. He was a small town, obviously, in Coos Bay, like me, and a lot of jealousies on the team. A lot of guys didn't care for him, but he's actually one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. Give you the time of day, encourage you, talk with you all the time. I used to run up with him as soon as we were done with track workouts, and we'd run up to the old mat court where we had our locker room and training room and where all the trainers were fixing everybody up and soaking you and icing you and all. It's just something I'll never forget. This guy, I'm pretty hyper and I don't waste a lot of time, but this guy was beyond. We'd run up there as soon as this workout's over and my ankles are dying. That track was so hard. I'd have to go stick him in 2 buckets of ice for the Achilles and the shin splits when we got on the track. And so I followed him up there. We'd run up there and he was right at it. Whole bunch of push-ups, whole bunch of pull-ups, whole bunch of sit-ups right after that workout where he did the 2 times a mile. And
Were you doing those with him or sitting with your feet in ice?
no, that was part of the workout. We all ran that together. It was probably a group of, oh my goodness, probably a good group of 20 guys, 12, 15, 20 guys at that running those workouts. So there was always 2 or 3 groups and they were running groups that were comparable to about where their fitness was at that time and how well they were racing. And he was just something else to see. Just a hell of a nice guy.
For your team, what about goal setting? What kind of coaching? What was Dellinger like discussing with you guys at the early in the season or
Well,
before season?
he'd give us the workouts. They were written down. And after that, I never had a lot of close interaction with him other than getting to the workouts, doing what we're supposed to do. But there were a lot of guys that were high over mileage, crazy stuff. Okay. And a lot of the guys, especially the milers and the 800-meter runners, those gut types, if he wanted you to do a 7-mile run in the morning, 6-minute pace, most of those guys were sleeping in, not running at all. The ones that were smart. Okay. That's kind of the way it went. And then a lot of them, the plotters, the guys that were real tough, like Terry Williams and Dave Taylor, those types that like that high mileage. Of course, they went ahead and did it. But yeah, I think that's the way it was. They're just, a lot of the morning runs were on their own, but they were quick. Some 6-minute, 5-minute pace sometimes in the morning. And unfortunately for me, I never got in. So the guys that got injured, it sounds like a funny thing to say, but if
They got some days off.
no, you take it easy. You take some time off, and I never did. So I think I was pretty dead. My legs were dead a lot of time for racing. But yeah, a lot of guys, the ones that really competed well, probably one of the most notable guys, one of the most fantastically talented guys I ever run with was a fellow named Scott Daggett. And he was running at the time, Priya was running sub 4-minute miler. But I mean, that guy was pretty wild. He'd run a 3:57 one week in California. Next week, he'd run a 4:30 mile. So you had those kind of types. There's just so many different types of individuals there running when I was there.
How big a team was traveling how did you travel for track meets?
Almost all the track and cross country, we traveled in a bus, in a pretty good sized bus. Another side note on Dillinger, I think I went 4 years. I went up to Eastern Washington on the bus with the teams, both track and in cross country a couple times. And that guy, I tell you, he could tell jokes. I never heard him tell one joke twice ever in my entire life. Just phenomenal. One of those kind of guys. So he was pretty entertaining fellow. Yeah.
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 How did school go for you, and what did you do in the summer? Say, like, after your freshman year. How'd your freshman year go academically, and what about that painting business and training? How did you manage all that?
Yeah. I'd actually got pretty lucky, and I had met a builder that was a pretty top-end builder. He picked up 108 units right close to downtown Eugene, and there's about 6 houses also that were on the block. So I got a contract with him, and I actually made good enough money that I ended up going to Europe in the summer. So I'm still 18. I raced all over Europe, had a lot of fun, ended up running a 3:42.7 per meters when I was still 18, right about the 1st of August in Zurich. So that was a fantastic time. I had a partner that helped me with that. Ed Spinney was his name, a lawyer. And there's a fellow out of Duke that came out here to train. And to give you an example of some of these guys, he was training with Athletics West. Well, long story short, I don't think that fellow could run 13:45 for 5,000. He jumps in with Harry Johnson in that high mileage training that everybody hated. And he ends up running a 3:57 mile. That's just the type of individuals that were down there running and racing, going to school or just hanging out.
Tell me about an 18-year-old doing a bit of Europe. How did you find these meets? How did you get entered? What was the arrangements for that?
It was a little off the cuff, but I had, if I remember right, Wessenhagen. For some reason, I'd been introduced to him and he gave me some help there. And of course, then I met Mike Boit. And Mike Boit, he was the king of this European meets. If you wanted to figure out where to go, what to do, that was the guy to trade with him for about a year. So he was pretty interesting. That's where I got most of my information. I just got on a plane, flew over there, got one of the train passes and started out in England, of course, ran in Munich, ran in Belgium, real good time, ran in Lausanne, Switzerland, 2 or 3 places in Switzerland. And then it was one of those years where those poor Kenyans, when they were boycotting, and I'd always wanted to run in Crystal Palace. So I'm in Lausanne and I get notice from the meet director that I'm okay. They're going to let me run there because they're all boycotting. A whole bunch of Kenyans aren't showing up. So I tried to make it on a train till I was running out of money, tried to make it on a train through France. And I didn't speak any French. And boy, I didn't get any help. I missed my connections. I never even made it to the beat. Other than that, it was a fantastic time. I wish I'd have went back and did some more.
342 and the 1500. What were your personal expectations or goals when heading back to Oregon then?
At that time, I thought I'm doing well. I'm under 4 minutes. I only ran 2 1-mile races at Oregon. I had my freshman year, I had to run steeple all year. I ran a pretty good steeple. I think it was in the like 8:53 range. It was one of the best steeplers for freshmen in the nation. But it was so loaded down there that I never got to run in a race. I was the 6th steepler on the team at that speed. They took all 5 guys, went to the Pac-8s. All 5 of them scored, and a kid from UCLA got second. So that kind of gives you an idea where it was at. Then I finally, when everybody's gone at NCAA's, they had that reconstruction meet, and I ran well. Before that, I ran a meet against a fellow. I wish I knew who the guy was. I don't remember. But it was really a JV meet on the Oregon track against Oregon State University. And a real fun race. I'm fit as hell, real strong, not a lot of speed. And I pretty much was a front runner too. I like to get out front and push the pace a bit. And I got out, I'm leading this whole race and I'm on a pretty good pace. I'm hitting 62s. I think, whoa, I'm gonna get a good time, right? And I'm doing well and I'm pretty quick. I don't think I'm gonna lose this one. And this kid from Oregon State passed me with about 450 yards, like I was standing still. Shocked the hell out of me. I've never had that happen, ever. But my first reaction was just relax. Just take it easy. You're on a good pace. You're going to get a good time. So I stuck with it as much as I could. I just kept grinding it out. He kept coming back and back to me. I get within about 200 yards at the 200-meter mark. He's really coming back. And then I'm thinking, I might be able to catch him. Well, I got lucky. I nipped him at the tape and I ran a 4:08. But that was the first mile. Then the second one in the reconstruction meet, I don't remember a lot of the details of it, but I ended up getting 5th, ran a 4:04 mile. And so I knew I was on the way to being able to run pretty good. I thought if I can get the speed work in, do what I need to do, I was hoping I could get down. Actually, when I ran that 3:42 to show you about how strong I was, the guy in front of me, I'm listening to the times. He went through in 53, 54. I go through in 55 and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fine, but I'm thinking, this is a little crazy, right? I ended up going through, I think 3/4 miles, probably in about 256. So I'm on rail for in that low 333 range, 35. But I hit the wall with about 100 yards to go and I bit it big time. Yeah. Just not
Yeah.
never enough speed work, you know.
Let me just go back to Mike Boyd. What was it like? You trained with him over the course of a year. What was he like handling workouts?
Well, that was a fantastic guy. This is a guy that never ran more than about 35, 40 miles a week, but his intervals were so intense. And we'd run hills together. I could actually beat him on hills up into Hendricks Park where pre-diet. Anyway, he was tough, but we'd do two workouts that he always did. And it was a 4 or 6 to it's 4 times, pretty sure it was four, it's either 4 or 6. Damn, I'm forgetting now, but 4 or 6 times a 200 meter. And he tried to do them at 26 seconds with a 30-second rest. Then he knew when he was pretty close to that, he was getting where he could be running those low 350 ranges. We did the same thing with the 400 meters. It was, he was always trying to hit 56 seconds with a 60-second rest. And I never could do it. I never did, wasn't able to do it. But running behind this guy was phenomenal. We're talking about a guy that can really run probably 45, 46 seconds for a quarter mile. His whole body looked like, his upper body looked like it almost detached when he started moving his arms and lifting his leg. There's something else to run with him. Besides free, he was one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. Spent all of his time on a run, talking with you, talking about tactics, talking about things. He paid me a really nice compliment one time. He said, Don, you have the best strength speed combination of any runner I've ever ran with. He said, you ought to be able to run around 326. That's what he thought I could do. Of course, I never came close to that, but just an interesting guy. And I used to take him to the airport. And that was at the time Nike was giving him the spikes, I think, were around $120. A little spendy, but he had bags that were like 5, 6 feet tall, this big around.
Yeah.
And I used to take him out he used to grab he'd have 2 or 3 bags like that he took home to give away to kids. Hell of a nice guy. He was finishing a PhD at Oregon. He spent a lot of time in school. He had a master's, I think, out of Stanford. Then he came up here to train. Yeah.
Just pre-name comes up, and of course, the tragic end to his life out there. Do you remember Vant and the news spreading and its impact on the team?
Yeah, it was pretty devastating. I remember it real well when I woke up the next morning and found out that he'd wrecked up there and that he died. Yeah, they had a beautiful memorial. It just affected a lot of people. I had a decent relationship. I had met his parents. I knew his parents. One time, his Morrisville high school coach, I tried corresponding with him to get workouts when I was 15, 16 years old. So, I had a pretty good close relationship in there, but no, it was just devastating, just real shocking. There's a few people that make a big deal about his drinking and that it was drinking related, but I don't really think so. I had actually ran into a guy that lived 2 houses down from where the accident occurred. Him and his father came onto the scene when he was there, when he was flipped over on his car. Police had just showed up and they actually wanted to lift the car off of him. And the police officer told him no, waiting for security. So it's kind of a shame because I don't think he had real severe injuries. It just pretty much smothered him. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe this is a personal question. At your age, what was your experience with death and that kind of personal impact of that? Any memories of that?
I think I was like the typical kid. I don't think it really affected me that much other than, damn, boy, that's some bad luck. But
Yeah.
I never really have contemplated the death thing till later here in life. I've had a quadruple bypass. I've died 3 or 4 different times over the last 7.5 years. So I have a totally different idea of it now. I could care less. I'm just going to take advantage of every day that you get. So it didn't affect me long term. He was a great guy. It was a big loss. And it would have been the real sad thing is that he was finally doing the interval workouts that he didn't do before the 72 Olympics. And he was getting fit. He was looking to really tie a couple ones on, just a hell of a guy. Lived for every moment. We took a trip, but one of the most meaningful times with me was he had a van dedicator in the van. And when he was putting on the meets for the Europeans that came in over in Madras, Oregon, with Eastern Oregon, I took that trip with him. That was a hell of a lot of fun. It was, I guess the number one thing I'd say about Pre is he was always on the go. Never lost a minute. He was always up to something, always wanted to do something. And he was just a big people person, going after the AAU officials and the TAC officials, all those officials during those time periods. And yeah, it's so ironic that you get guys like Lossie Viren, okay, in some of those countries, and how well they're taken care of. And Pre's living in a trailer home in Springfield, Oregon, on food stamps. He's one of the best runners in the world. So that's kind of how it all started out. And I cut that whole thing because Bowerman, of course, I ran under Bowerman also. Bowerman was he was just more of a teacher, a lot more personal. I've had tons and tons of conversations with him, especially about form, about tactics, about resting, all of those things. It was a pretty good mix down there at Oregon. And then I actually ran a bit with the Athletics West with Harry Johnson, Craig Virgin, guys like that. They had three of the top steeplechasers at that time: George Malley, Doug Brown, forgetting the third here.
Ron Addison.
Ron Addison. Yeah,
Oh,
Ron Addison was the other one. George Malley I would put him probably in the talent range of somebody like that, Scott Daggett. Unbelievably talented guy. Just didn't quite get there on the racing and probably too much mileage. Yeah.
Let's talk about the other stuff of that time. A lot of people, and I want to hear about your relationship to Athletics West, exactly what form that took. But by 72, we've got performance enhancing drugs affecting the marathon in a couple years. And what was going on there? What were you aware of? And what was the talk about drugs?
I got along real well, probably with most of the throwers and the sprinters than I did even distance runners. I've noticed late in life, I figured it out, but these distance runners are pretty cliquish. Okay. I don't think I ever really fit into the mold of the clique. And so I was a little more hands off, got along with some of the other guys. So of course, you pick up more on what's going on with the steroids and all that with Mac Wilkins, all the guys that were training at that time that were some pretty great athletes. And not really much on the running side of it. There was actually some rumors. Pre all of a sudden got pretty hairy, but did I even suggest that maybe he was trying some steroids? I don't think so, but not really much with the distance runners. No, we read more about it now than I was aware of then during that time.
What about money? Of course, Pre was involved in that, trying to change the nature of the sport that would happen in a few years. And you getting involved with Athletics West. Did you get gear? Did you get expenses? What was your relationship with that?
Well, I was getting gear. I never did get the payments they brought out a whole crew of people, whole track team, all the disciplines in track and field, and they put them up, paid them pretty well. I didn't get any of that. In fact, I was a little ticked off. I was running really well. I asked Harry if I could go with him, and he wouldn't take me. So that's why I ended up paying for myself to go there. It was always real tough. Listen, Nike has always been, I'm not a big Nike fan. Okay. Never have been. And I've always thought they really took advantage of athletes. And I think of where Pre was at this time. Then you look at guys like Phil Knight, worth $86 billion. And it's always been that way. And they still use his likeness to this day. So it's just that kind of thing that it was tough. You either had to work. I was doing too much. I was working in a pretty good discipline in school, very tough, and trying to train. And I don't think any of it went as well as it should have. Looking back, if I had to do it over, I'd have taken out loans. But I was just one of those types and I didn't want any loans. And it was a mistake.
It's interesting to see how your perspective changes on it. And managing to have no injuries is pretty amazing through that period. How did your pursuit of architecture go for?
Oh, very good. It's actually a 5-year program.
Oh, okay.
In architecture in Oregon. And it was a tough discipline in that, for instance, you go to, let's say a regular course, you get 3 credits. in most colleges, and it'd be for 3 hours, 3 separate hours during the week. In architecture, you got 5 credits, but you did 4 hours, 3 days a week. That's how many hours you had to put in. And then you get to Friday or Saturday, they'd hit you with, they'd want 300 drawings, 300 sketches. And you're up all night doing projects. And the sleep thing, the sleep deprivation was probably not good. And unfortunately for me, until probably 2 years ago, I never really have slept more than 4 or 5 hours a night. And I'm pretty certain that was not good. And even to this day, I can finally sleep 8 hours. It's pretty strange. But all right, man, you don't get sleep at this age. And especially now, I was on a treadmill trying to run 5-minute pace for about 30 seconds. How insane is that? I'm 4 months out of a quadruple bypass, but I know when to shut it down. I've always been able to know when to shut it down so that I don't get injured. I maybe be a little sore for a couple of days, jump back on it and get at it. But I've always had a good sense of when to stop.
It's an interesting thing to be able to balance keeping yourself healthy and that competitive drive. I think you had a sense that you weren't quite getting all the juice for the squeeze, that Mike Boit saw potential there. How were you psychologically handling what you were able to accomplish? You're doing all this, managing your academic career and your life. How was that jiving with your competitiveness?
Yeah, probably a little ADHD involved there, but it didn't seem like a problem to me. I don't remember a lot of past things. I pretty much just concentrate on the here and now of the day. And I always had it's funny. That's a funny question that you ask, because when I was in high school, when I ended up running 420, 422 for a mile, I don't even think at that time I was even thinking 4-minute miles, that kind of thing. But as soon as you just slowly progress and you see how guys that are very good are doing, especially when you're working out with them every day, pretty soon it clicks in real fast. And then you get to thinking, damn, I think I can do this, I can do that. And if you don't think you can do it, you're never going to do it. That's basically it. And some of the guys down there, they were really hard to deal with that were racing, really some megalomaniacs. One of the guys that was probably the most competitive, that was probably the most exciting to be around besides Free, was Paul Geis. Okay, so when Paul Geis showed up and Paul Geis was on the scene, pretty interesting things going on. Typical Texan. Everybody on the team hated the guy. I swear to God, there wasn't a guy that liked Paul Geis. And the funny part is, but he's the big star, right? And to give you an example, we had a winter day that was so icy that you couldn't run outside. So they had a pretty good loop around Mac Court. And so we're up there, we're a bunch of the distance runners. We're in there, we're doing a workout, we're doing some laps. And so I think it was Paul who suggested doing it. I don't think he ever did any hurdling in his life, but he decides to set up some hurdles. So we're all running around these hurdles. And I'm an excellent hurdler. Just luckily, I am. Definitely not some of the steepers that are great. But anyway, we're running around this loop. And to give you an idea about Paul, we bumped into each other and he fell down with the hurdle, probably 170 pounds at that time. I was never a small miler. And he goes down, he hits his hands, and he comes up swinging with a closed fist.
No kidding.
So the only thing I did is I just hit him with both palms and he went sliding on his ass. And I'm thinking, I wanted to hit him. And then I thought, I can't do that. I'm trying to get a scholarship and run on the team. And the funniest part of that whole affair was, for the next 4 weeks, all I heard was all the other guys on the team that said, God, we wish you'd have just knocked him out. But
One chance.
I got a little great later on, but it was just funny. But that's how competitive it was. When I got third behind Free in the 10K, for some reason I had a great day. But all the milers, the whole team used to sit above. When you first came into the south end of the track, there was an equipment room, and up above is where all the athletes were. There's probably 40, 50 guys up there, and they all had bets on what lap I was going to drop out of this 10K. That's how competitive it was. It was a dog-eat-dog world, man. It was some tough competition, but it never bothered me. I always figured I could get in there, and then when I got into the workouts and relaxed, it was pretty easy for me. And after that, I'm done. I'm gone. really didn't socialize as much as I'd like to with a lot of these guys.
And these are great stories to hear, Don. Thanks for going. All these memories are great. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy those. What happened with you then at the end of your 5 years at Oregon?
Pretty much there, I kept trying to run. I ended up moving up to Portland, 1980, I believe it was. Still trying to run hard, working. It was just tough. It was pretty tough. I ended up doing fairly well. I got a second and a third place in the Portland Marathon, 5:20 pace, that kind of thing. Ran some pretty good races. They used to have a bridge to bridge run. They just built a new 205 bridge. I got seventh out there. It was an international race, pretty good. 7 point some miles. So it went like that. Never really got back on the track like I'd like to have. I think I just came across some photos the other day where I think I'd run probably a 4:16, 18 mile as a master's, pretty close to 30 years of age. And that's pretty much it. I just kept trying to do it. It never quite worked out, obviously, but always it's the running and the training that I enjoyed.
We've all got to go through these passages where at some point things stop. Some people are able to go have a professional career and so on afterwards. How did you deal with that lack of the training? You enjoyed the training. When you said, okay, I'm going to let that go. How was that for you transition?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really let it go, to be honest with you. I didn't get to compete a lot when I was at Oregon. I never competed as much I liked
Right.
throughout, but that's why I'm looking at doing some master's training and competing here coming up pretty soon. But I had a pretty dead spot here for the last 7.5 years. I got injured. I had a stroke when I was 55 years old. Still trying to train. I think I was around 202, 203, 800 meter fitness at that time. And all of a sudden I have a stroke come out of nowhere. Then I finally figured out I was getting ready to head down to a meet in Sacramento, a World Masters meet. And I'm working for a fellow that I used to run with. He's about 17 years older than me. Norm Oyler, owns a construction company. Long story short, I'm up working on his buildings, wheelbarrow concrete, up pretty good inclines, fit as hell. We were working 12-hour days. I'd take off and run a 10-mile run in the middle of the day, come back and work. So I'm leaving one. I just about was ready to pick up a skill saw, and my whole right arm just goes totally numb, paralyzed. Anyway, long story short, I ended up figuring out that I had a fib, but I went down to that Sacramento meet. And I took 3 or 4 weeks off because I thought, boy, something's going on here. Talked to a cardiologist, got some testing done late in August. This was in July, but I jumped into this race and I'm doing well. I'm at 61 on the first lap. There's 2 or 3 guys right in front of me. I think, I'll outkick these guys. I may run 159 world record for my age group. And holy, with about 350 to go, I thought I was going to die. Took me about a minute to finish the race. And this is 9 in the morning. I went back to my hotel room, went to sleep, and slept till 1 the next morning. And I couldn't get out of bed so that's been a real drag for about 7.5 years. So I missed some time there. I'm looking forward to get back into training. Yeah. All through this
So,
time, I've always tried to train.
so where are you now in training? What's your outlook for actually you'll be able to train well enough to run a race?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've always liked, as far as my training goes, I never liked jumping into intervals where the typical distance runner, Dillinger workout, jump on the track, do 6 times a mile. Like that shit is hard, right? It's just too hard. So me, I've always been the other way around. I'll start running hundreds. I'll start running 220s, 300s. Then as soon as I get my speed to where it's fairly decent and you got that range of motion, you know what I'm talking about. Then I'll start moving up and doing that. But I will probably start out with 400-meter racing, try to really get some 800-meter. And then if I can get fit enough, I'll try. I'm actually shooting for, I'd like to run. There's a pre-mile in the pre-meet, July 5th of 2025, which is the 50th year anniversary of the meet. I'm looking forward to that. We'll see. But this stuff is real tough. It's difficult.
Well, you're real tough, Don. It's really good to hear. It's a very big inspiration to people. I got in shape and ran it when I turned 60. I started steeplechasing and I ran the 800 meters.
No, really?
I won the
Steeple.
Ontario championships for a couple. Running the steeplechase when you're
That's
60 is more about being the one that's willing to do it.
that's totally insane. That's the hardest race that Brett could fill. Kudos to you. I'll tell you what, I don't think I'd run a steeple. Again,
The thing was, we were headed to having the Masters Championships in Toronto in 2020.
I
It was going to be here if we hadn't had COVID. And I thought if I just really focus, I might be able to make the final. And so I had a goal of making the finals at the Masters, and that all went with COVID. It's pretty
how
inspirational. It'd be fun to
how
see
old are you
what
now?
you get up to. Yeah, it's a good
Oh,
community for anybody who hasn't done master sport. There's one guy I talked to early on in this series who was a Pennsylvania state champion and All American small college Edinburgh, who's now a powerlifting
oh, what?
state champion. Yeah, Jeff Foster
Oh, wait.
out in Wyoming, and he does powerlifting now. And it's weird to think about, but he's a big guy like you. I guess he's got fast twitch muscles too, but he's a guy like you that kind of thrived on the distance.
I still do leg weights because, and not heavy, but I do them because I've had a lot of luck with the leg weights. I think you get some strength you can't even get from hills or otherwise. In coaching, I had some girls at St. Mary's Academy downtown, couldn't run 20, 30 miles a week, had them doing the same kind of program. There's other things you can do. I get on a bike a lot. Now, when I'm wiped out, I can't, after I'm done with a run, I'll try and take some bike rides for 2 days. I hate swimming unless I'm in 90-degree water. So I do that too. If I like, if I could do it, but these other types of things you should do, you got to jump right back in there. That'd be a lot of fun.
I lived overseas a lot and I did some triathlons where it was always warm. Give me a summary real quick of what your coaching experience was. Did you have a good experience coaching? Coaching the girls.
Oh, that was fantastic. When I was running in high school, I met a fellow, ended up being a national champion at 400 meters in the mile relay, Coral Shaw. And he just passed away this last year, sad. But him and I were both coaching down there. It was a great experience, a lot of fun. At that time, it was an all girls school. I'm not sure how I even came across it. It was funny as all hell, but great experience, a lot of fun. To be honest with you, I enjoy going to the meets more watching the girls. They're much more competitive. They're not into themselves like the guys are. They're fun to watch. You get 10th place, 15th place is running just as hard as first place. So I've always really enjoyed the girls. And that was a fantastic experience. I coach a lot of basketball team, boys too. I still referee high school and small college basketball. So I'm still involved with a lot of the kids. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what, it's inspirational, a lot of fun being around. I'm a kid myself. Unfortunately, I've never grown up, so I get along well with the young ones.
You've had a great journey, good storytelling, Don. It's fun to spend time with you going over this and hearing some of these things, some of these stories I've never heard before, and some of your insights, and your attitude's great. And you face big health challenges and you're just looking forward. Good luck with everything. We'll look forward to seeing what happens out there on the track and on the roads with you.
I'll give you another really good tidbit most people don't know. I was fairly close to Bill Bowerman. He coached me for quite a while, even after I was done at Oregon with Bill Dillinger. And I actually was pissed at Bill for a long time. And now I'm going to go down and I'd like to make up with him. I've forgiven him. I thought he really did me wrong. But now that I think about it, it's something I should let go of. And he's getting up there in age. But the funny thing was that Bill Bowerman, he did not want to quit coaching. Okay. They had a state mandated retirement age in Oregon at the time that he had to stop working and he couldn't coach any longer. Of course, Dillinger was his protege. He was going to be the coach, and they had a little deal going where he wanted to remain as the coach and he was going to let Bill Dillinger collect the salary. Never worked out. And that caused a huge rift between those two, but it just shows you how they're just different personalities.
Let's just name drop a few of the other big stars that you crossed paths with. we'll have Alex Kasich on here a little bit, an Athletics West guy for 8 years. Mary Decker, Athletics West. Or what was your path crossing with Mary?
Oh, she was fantastic. She was running. She was fairly young too. I can't remember her age when she first came in, but couldn't have been much more than 17, 18. She was young, but a great gal. Fun to be around. Pretty weird to be out running with a girl at 5 minute pace on runs. Okay. She could do that. It was pretty fantastic. And I'd go out. I was at that time, I was even going out with Ron Tabb, and I was running 20, 22 mileage with him at sub 5 minute pace. He's a phenomenal athlete, but I got to know him fairly well. I actually rebuilt his garage for him, a garage and a deck and a fence. And that was about the time they were breaking up. But both great individuals, but she just moved on and runs with a great gal now. She's fantastic. They're both fantastic athletes, both fantastic people to be around.
Ron really had great success in his relationship with Meb
Oh yeah,
Husky
exactly.
is
Oh, he's
spectacular,
an
and the
overcoach.
success they've had.
He's still at it. He's still coaching young kids, did a college kids, and on the side sitting there up in Fort Myers in Florida. But he's having a good time. He's a character. He's a character. But he loved Barley Bar. He loved him so much.
Yeah, a couple of these people, I think it was Lorraine Moeller was talking about a race one day, and a little community race, and she's there, and yeah, world-class Olympic medalist, and she said,
Oh yeah.
I was going to win the turkey trot and win a turkey for dinner, and I finished third in the race because there were so many people there. Some of the races before there was prize money. You have experience with that?
Oh my God. When I got into racing, I'm telling you, it was 75 cents to get into a race. And it was all no prize money, but it was all prizes, stuff like that. The ribbons and the medals and the turkey I lost to Alex. I got second to him in a race in Junction City, just a little north of there, north of Eugene. And I always give him a hard time about that. But yeah, there not much in the way of prizes. And now there's money, lots of money. It's good to see. I had wished it bothers me that people like Nike, Phil Knight, those bigger companies, Adidas, haven't really done a lot for track and field like I think they could. I don't think we've ever really been, I would say the marketing's not there and making things go to where it's more interesting for people. They made some kind of inroads, but unless you're a top athlete, you're not going to get any money. You're not going to get any help. You're not even going to be able to train. We really regressed. I don't think it's really gone anywhere where all these companies they're making billions. So that's the only gripe I got about it all. But I think that's just something you got to deal with. If you want to run, you got to deal with it. Yep.
Yeah.
And if at Oregon, I can tell you, probably most of the runners that were very good, I can tell you without a doubt, were from very high income families. Guys like Paul Geis, Scott Daggett, Vince, Mark Feig, all the guys that were really top level. Generally, they had some financial backing that was way beyond what the normal guy would have. So it's never been on a real fair, equal level anyway. So, but you figure it's just more fun to beat them. If you beat them.
It's great stuff of the history of running. You were in a place where, like you just said, it's legendary. Movies are made and stories are told. It's pretty cool.
Oh, no, it's fantastic. They had a basketball team down there that Bill Walton played. I got a front row seat in back court where UCLA hadn't lost a game. They didn't lose a game all year to the NCAA championship, but they lost against Ernie Kent at Oregon.
I didn't remember that they play. Yeah, it didn't dawn on me they played at Oregon. All right.
Yeah, they played in that court there. That was the only game they lost that season. Yeah. Just the incredible athletes down there. I'm a big basketball fan. They had the wrestlers down there were fantastic. We had a few wrestlers in high school that were first in world Greco-Roman wrestling. I've just been around athletes forever, and it's always been just really interesting. So a lot of different characters, especially the weight men and the throwers at Oregon. Mac Wilkins is a fantastic guy. If you've ever met him, and he looked like a great guy. When I first met him, you meet him now, he's 20, 30 pounds lighter than me. And so that whole steroid thing and all that stuff, it's incredible, especially with these these new records and the new, the women's running 209. It's a crazy new world, but I think it's better to stay away from the drugs. I got a new heart. I got about 72 inches of new coronary artery. So I'm lucky I'm alive. And I'm going to tell you what, you can really feel the difference. It's I don't know how to explain it. I had really tiny, genetically small coronary arteries in my heart. So it's amazing. I was actually able to run it all. It's pretty fascinating. And these two gals, a gal from Toronto, held my heart in their hands for 5.5 hours without a heart lung machine. And I'm telling you, mystic world, you got to go, holy, how do I said, listen, her name's Donna. It was my mother's name. I said, Donna, when you sat around the table, when you were a kid, 8, 9 years old, playing Scrabble with your parents, did you ever imagine yourself, your hand, fixing them? I mean, she told the whole story. Because I told her, as soon as I come to, I said, I don't want to hear any medical terms, Donna. I just want to know what you saw, what you felt when you held my heart in your hand. And she told me. It was fantastic. So it's been a wild ride. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get to know you before, but now Don Beckwith 2.0 sounds like you're doing great and heading forward.
I'll get out to your way. We'll meet up someday. I've got to go back and thank these girls. It's pretty fascinating. So I'll go back to Cleveland here, probably in the wintertime. I'll look you up. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for all your time, Don.
Appreciate it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.